Welcome and thank you for coming. I think once again, 1 year later, the attendance really speaks to the significance of this issue. So thank you for your interest in this important community conversation. My name is Megan Miles, and I'm the chair of the Bruce Peninsula Environment Group, as well as the owner and operator of the Fitz Hostel in Lions Head. And as of about a week ago, also I work for Parks Canada. I would also like to acknowledge tonight that we're on the traditional territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. I'd also like to acknowledge that we have 3 recently elected councillors from Chippewas of Nawash, Jossie Russell-Taylor, Carleen Kishig, and Sid Najwan, as well as 3... And we also have 3 councillors here from the municipality of Northern Bruce Peninsula Council, Griffin Salen, Tom Boyle, and Mayor Milt McKeever. So tonight we're talking about sustainability, particularly a sustainable approach to tourism. So by sustainable, I mean an approach that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. It is a long-standing principle that our First Nations neighbours have used and referred to as the 7 generations principle, and that's also been explored through the most recent Source of Knowledge Forum. I think we're all here because we love the peninsula, the water, the trees, the wildlife, the trails, and the community. We want to protect it for generations to come. We also want to be an economically viable place to live, and we want to be a healthy, vibrant community. Sustainable development means that we don't have to choose between the environment and the economy. And in the case of tourism, I think the case for the environment is strong, as visitors are less likely to be interested in visiting a murky Georgian Bay. So 1 year ago, we had our first meeting in Lions Head on sustainable tourism, and at that monumental first meeting, we brainstormed the challenges, opportunities, and ideas that were before us. While we are a small community that's under-resourced in many ways, we have lots of exciting opportunities. The opportunity to become a world-class destination, both to visit and to live. The opportunity to share the environment with other Canadians and visitors from around the world, some of whom have never hiked or camped before. We also have the opportunity to become a model for sustainable tourism that other communities can look to. So in the past year, we've made some pretty significant headway. We've initiated some important conversations and helped elevate the issue onto the public agenda. In less than 1 year, we're not only able to get 1 level of government on board, but 4. That being the municipality, the county, the Ontario Ministry of Tourism via RTO 7, as well as Parks Canada. And we look forward to working with the 5th, the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. And now that I've just started working in government, I have an increasing appreciation of just how great of an accomplishment that is. And that extensive collaboration is what allows us to stand here tonight and actually report on some progress. And so I'm going to introduce Brian McCaddy. So he is the steering committee of the Sustainable Tourism Action Plan.
And it's great to see such a great turnout tonight. It is interesting to reflect back on October of 2016, where we had our first meeting down in Lions Head. And about 160 people attended at that meeting, and we were totally overwhelmed at the numbers, and we're not far off that tonight. So it's tremendous to still see the strong interest in sustainable tourism here in Northern Bruce Peninsula. My task here tonight is just to give you just remind you a little bit of what we've done over the last year. Megan touched on some of that, and give you a sense of the process that came about in order to hire our consultants 2031 to do the Sustainable Tourism Plan. So I talked about October 2016. February of 2017, we were in this room in partnership with the Tobermory Chamber of Commerce, and we had a discussion of what was going to happen during tourism season 2017 and some of the plans municipality, parks, the various partners the Chamber of Commerce had. That was a well-attended meeting as well. And coming out of that meeting, we really, I think, probably drew the attention of the Regional Tourism Organization, RTO 7, that Megan mentioned. And they said, you know, there's something happening up in northern Bruce Peninsula, and they were aware of the exploding tourism the last couple of years, since 2014 in particular. And they were very interested in seeing that. And so we're also very open when we contacted them, got in touch with them, Megan did, to talk about more support for what we're doing up here. And also the municipality and the various groups are doing their very best on improving things on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis. We all felt it was tremendously important to put together a comprehensive overall plan that deals with the issue a little more detail, and that would be a more long-range plan. And in fact, we've settled on a 3-year plan you'll hear about tonight. Just a little bit, RTO 7, we can't say enough about their leadership in this initiative. They've provided 2/3 of the funding for the plan that we're talking about this evening. And that funding, the final 1/3, was provided by Parks Canada, came forward very early. The municipality and the county also have dollars on the table to make this plan happen. And so with any plan, we established a steering committee to guide the project. And I wanted to just quickly read through the names on the steering committee, because I think it's important for you to know who's driving the process, who's behind the process. So the steering committee, I chair the steering committee as a citizen member. We have Bill Jones, the CAO from Northern Bruce Peninsula, and Councillor Salen, Griff Salen from Council. Bill Sullivan, who's here tonight, you'll hear from in a moment, from RTO, and Alex Hogan from the RTO office. Ethan Mele and our new park superintendent, David King, sit on the steering committee for parks. Kelly McAdam, who is the president of the Tobermory Chamber, is also a key member, in fact is vice chair of the steering committee. Jack Schenk, who many of you will know from the community, the St. Edmunds Property Owners Organization, citizen organization, is on the committee. Megan Miles, of course, from BPEG. Chris LaForest from the county, who's the head of economic development and planning at the county, Bruce County. And Jack Van Dorp assists on that as well. Dora Ritchie from the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, who we'll hear from in a moment. So those are your committee members, giving you a sense of that. Just a little bit on how 2031 came about, the consulting company we're so pleased to have. We set up a subcommittee of the steering committee and went through a request for a proposal process, and 3 bidders responded to that. And a subcommittee of the steering committee went through a scoring system to analyze those three bids, 3 proposals. And from that, we were very pleased to choose 2031, who's done incredible work across this country and internationally on sustainable tourism. So that's just a bit about that. And as chair of the committee, I continue to work with 2031 in RTO. We're planning a local tour for the RTO members next week to see important places to see in Tobermory and Lion's Head and places in between, and heading down to Cape Croker as well. We'll be interviewing a lot of people locally so they make sure they've got a good sense of the issues and put together the thoughts. So that's a little bit of background. I think people always wonder, how does this stuff happen and who's involved and what's happening behind the scenes? So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into the organization of the plan that we're all working on. So at this point, it's my great pleasure to introduce Dora Ritchie. Dora works at the Environment Office at the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, and I've had the great opportunity to work with Dora on planning issues. And something I forgot to mention, I guess, when I did the introduction, I should have said Brian McCaddy. I'm a professional planner by training, and I too have recently started with Parks Canada. Megan and I are working together on some parks issues, and in fact we'll be working closely with Dora on those issues. So, ladies and gentlemen, a welcome for Dora Ritchie from Sun.
Saugeen de Benjaba, Inwa Nishna Beking, Makwando Dem. My given name is Dora Ritchie. My spiritual name is Spirits from All Around. That's a Kiwataso and Indijnakos. That's Spirits from All Around. That's my name. That's my given name to my culture. This is an important event for an important initiative. I've had the pleasure of working for the Joint Chiefs and Councils in my nation for the past 5 years. And during that time, I've been given the opportunity to see a multitude of issues, development, stressors on the environment, and I guess threats to our culture. This is a very sacred and dear place to me. I've also had the privilege of knowing where my ancestors have been for thousands of years. This is home to me. It's not just a place that I call home. This is a place where my ancestors existed since the beginning of time. And we're privileged to be a part of this committee, and I commend Megan and the entire steering committee for putting together this very important initiative. This is a sacred place that we live in, the peninsula. I call it the Saugeen Peninsula, we call it the Bruce Peninsula, but this is a home for all of us. And I really appreciate the acknowledgement of the 7 generations approach, because beyond 150 years, what is the legacy that we're going to leave for our children and our grandchildren? And that's the thing that drives my passion for the work that I do for the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. And I'm looking forward to working collaboratively with the 5 levels of government, because this truly was an initiative started by the community. We are the people of this territory. We're the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. You two are owners of this land. Not owners, but we're only borrowers and caretakers of this land for tomorrow. And I really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak and welcome everybody. I'm looking forward to this initiative. And the one key thing that I want to drive home is that this is an initiation by the people on this land. And what I mean by the people, the First Nations, and everybody that lives in this territory, in this peninsula. This is a place you have to live for a very long time. But it's really up to the 5 levels of government to really take the lead on this initiative and to ensure that we have something that's as beautiful and as sacred as we have the peninsula today. So with that, I want to say Chimigwech, and I'm looking forward to the presentations. Chimigwech.
And the next couple of speakers will be talking about their perspectives, but certainly also talking about what their organizations have done over the last year or so to contribute to sustainable tourism and what their thoughts are at this point in time. So the next speaker is no stranger to any of us in this room, Mayor Mele McKeever. He can speak next, I guess bring greetings as he always does as the mayor, but also to talk about what Northern Bruce Peninsula has been doing and their thoughts from the municipality's perspective. Mayor Mele.
Thank you, Brian, and good evening, everyone. And it's a pleasure to see the interest that we have here in this meeting again 1 year later. And I think Megan and Brian, we thank you for the initiative, and I think you're on the right track. You're getting this organized and see where we head from here. So with regards to the municipality of Northern Bruce Peninsula, I was told we were just to give a brief update on some of the initiatives that we're involved in, trying to accommodate the numbers that we're seeing the last 3-4 years. So, and basically for us, I mean, we're simply trying to, I guess the word is almost catch up, I guess, with infrastructure to accommodate the numbers. And some of the things that we're doing is rather temporary, I guess, and we would like to perhaps see more permanent facilities around. But the municipality, of course, we don't have permanent washrooms to accommodate everyone, so we brought in portable banks of washrooms, and we added 3 locations this year, down in the Harbour Schoolbell Park and Legion parking lot. And we also had additional summer positions for garbage, recycling, maintenance, and by law enforcement. And we also provided additional evening pickup for garbage and recycling as well. We were noticing that it simply wasn't enough, the day shift that was on, to deal with all the garbage that we were dealing with. So we added the evening shift, and we think it proved to be pretty successful. And as well, we added recycling to every collection area throughout Tobermory. So we added recycling this summer, and I was just asking Bill, our CIO, how it went, and with regards to how were people using the facilities properly, and were they putting recycling in the recycling side of things. So, and he said the students were impressed at how well the community was, how they were using the recycling and the garbage. We also partnered with Parks Canada to regulate and enforce parking, and we were having an issue in Cameron Lake area with regards to illegal parking. And so we tried to, as I said, we added bylaw enforcement to try and deal with that. Also on the Dorcas Bay Road, we Parks Canada created a parking lot there this summer, which got vehicles off Dorcas Bay Road, which we wanted to do, of course. It was for the safety aspect of things. We created tour bus parking at the Hay Bay parking lot, and prohibited buses from parking downtown. And we implemented paid parking, and the paid parking program met our expectations and exceeded our expectations, actually. So we had a bit of a startup cost with regards to kiosks, and that about $100,000 we had invested, plus some miscellaneous things as well. But our revenue this year was somewhere in the about the $270,000 mark. So we were pretty happy with that, and of course that money is going to go right back into infrastructure. And our program this year ran from May 19th until September the 15th. It was actually scheduled to run longer, but we felt that we would back off on the shoulder season in the fall, and so we backed up about a month on our paid parking. And of course, paid parking, we will evaluate paid parking this fall. We'll evaluate everything this fall. We really haven't had an opportunity to deal with that yet. Just in case you haven't noticed, we're involved in zoning and official plan right now, so we're a little busy with that. And we handed out 4,000 parking passes, free parking passes. Cabot Head was closed this season, and due to the status of the facility, and there were environmental concerns there, and they have committed to site remediation in 2018, so that facility, it'll remain closed until 2019 at least. So for 2018, as I mentioned, we're going to be looking at the feedback that we received from our paid parking. And we would, of course, we would like to accommodate more vehicles off the side of the road, if we could. And so we're still looking at trying to create parking somewhere. And that's something that, as I said, we raise the money now, so we want to to show the community that we are investing the money back in the community. And also, as a partner in this sustainable tourism plan, we will be considering the recommendations from the plan in 2018. So that's just a brief update, and most of that is from the Tobermory area, because that's where we are dealing with the majority of our tourists. And we had the odd issue in the south, but nothing compared to Tobermory. So thank you, and look forward to the meeting our consultants here tonight. Thank you.
The next speaker tonight is Bill Sullivan. Bill is the Chief Executive Officer, CEO of Regional Tourism Organization 7. That's the area that we were in, as well as Gray, and is it different? Simcoe, Gray and Simcoe as well. And just a quick note, we can't thank Bill enough and the RTO 7 staff for the support they provided. They really got us started on this, and it's been a tremendous, and continues to be, a tremendous relationship. Bill, please.
I'll keep this very brief. This is not my comfort zone. So a lot of people don't know what RTO 7 is, so I'm just going to take a moment or two to just explain what we are. In 2008-2009, the province commissioned a report on tourism, and in that report, it was recommended that tourism take on a regional approach. So there were 13 RTOs created, 13 regional tourism organizations, and then they just numbered them 1 through 13. We became 7 by virtue of being where we are. We encompass, our region is Bruce, Gray, and Simcoe counties. So we go from Lake Huron to Simcoe, Lake Simcoe. So it's a pretty diverse region, but it has great product all the way, and that diversity is actually one of our strengths, because we're one of the really true four-season destinations. And it works out, really makes my job a lot easier when you have all 4 seasons to work with. We concentrate on 4 pillars. We concentrate on product development, marketing, workforce development, and labor issues, and investment attraction. This particular project that we're working on with your group is in our product development section, pillar. So we provide support through a lot of different programs, whether they're what we call a partnership program, which is where the funding has come out of for this program. We also have media relations program, experience development programs. We also have social media programs. Some of those have funding attached and some don't. But we're very much in a collaborative situation where we try to work with partners. We don't like to always lead. We like to keep the process going, and I think, as the steering committee is probably finding out, we have a couple of people that push things along quite a bit. We have a pretty balanced team as well. I came from the private sector. I spent over 30 years in the resort industry. The person that's heading up this project, Alex Hogan, has an environmental background. We have 2 people that are in the communications field and 1 other person that's in the product development field. So we've got a balanced approach. So when it's appropriate and the questions are asked, we're there to provide support and information to help this process along. And also, let people know what some of the other stuff that's happening around the province and the region, and we've got some best practices out there that we can rely on. So when 2031 is ready to ask questions or get feedback, we're ready to stand there as well. Now, where we are with this particular project, we're part of the steering committee, as you heard. We're part of the funding team. But when this particular part of the project is over, it doesn't mean that we walk away. We're going to be here for the long term to help this proceed down the path, whether it's 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. We'll be in and out as appropriate to this program. But more importantly, we've got the support now. We've got other organizations starting to look at this to see how what you're doing, this model that you're creating, can also help them out down the road. So this is something it's kind of leading edge, and you're on the forefront of this, and I applaud you on your efforts. And it's really important that this is accomplished, and it's done in a balanced. I keep using the word balanced approach, the phrase balanced approach, and a balanced result. And I'm hoping that that's what we come to at the end of this. But I thank you for your time. I wish I'd been up here a lot more. I've been up here 3 times now since the middle of September. It's beautiful up here. I don't know why I'm not living here. But I think in a couple months I might know. But anyways, Thank you very much. I thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate being here this evening, and best of luck on this process. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Bill. And our next speaker is Ethan Mele from Parks Canada. Many of you know Ethan from his previous time here as a park interpreter and various activities. And these days he's back. We're pretty happy about that. As the acting external affairs officer, also working in his home position on communications and building partnerships in the community. It's a new position at Parks Canada, so we're very pleased to have Ethan back with us here and sharing his thoughts tonight. Ethan.
It's good to be back. I miss this place a lot. Pleased to be able to give a little bit of an update from Parks Canada tonight for you. I think everyone knows it was the Canada 150 summer, and that meant free entry at Parks Canada sites across the country. And we knew that was going to mean it would be a busy summer, and we spent a lot of time preparing. Like all of last fall and winter and up into spring, getting ready for it. And one of the big things we did this year was implementing a timed parking program in the park for people that wanted to get to the grotto. We did that to reduce the congestion we'd seen in previous years and make a safer experience and also a better experience. So there's a fly buzzing around here. Because people were making repeat trips back to the park, trying to get in, hoping a parking space would come in, and spending too much time lined up in cars. So it went much better this summer, and I'm pleased to say that we redirected a third fewer cars from Cyprus this summer than we had the year before, and we thought it was a pretty good success. If anyone was listening to radios or visiting our website or looking on the highways, you'll notice we had a very active communications program. We wanted to spread the word to let our potential visitors know that it was going to be a busy summer, and that if they were planning to come, they needed to plan and expect that they might not get in at some places because it was going to be busy. So we built a dedicated web page for the grotto. We had alerts on our website all throughout the season to give people an update. We would ramp up the nature of those if it was a holiday weekend because we knew it would be very busy. And we had social media campaigns on our Facebook and Twitter pages. We had billboards on highways leading up to the Peninsula. I hope some people saw some of those. And we're directing people to our grotto webpage to get information. We had radio campaigns all across the Bayshore Broadcasting Network, which went all over central Ontario, and which gave people a heads up for what they could expect, especially on weekends. We put out media releases. We went to industry events with travel media, and including the Canadian Ethnic Media Association in Toronto to try and reach some of the groups of people we know are coming to visit the park. And we also shared a lot of information with our tourism partners to keep them up to speed on what was going on. And we think it went fairly well. One of the things we did this year was direct people to our visitor center as a first point of contact in coming to the park so that we could help them to identify what the best experiences would be for them, where we could offer an experience. And it worked. You probably saw the signs down at Johnson's Field that were directing people there when the grotto was full. And it worked quite well. Our visitor center statistics more than doubled this summer. So we were really pleased. It's a great facility for hosting people, and it has a lot of capacity. And it didn't hurt that it was free, of course. Everybody likes to get in for free. So now, a few things about what's ahead. Building on the time parking program from this summer, we are investigating going online in the future with reservations for grotto parking. We're just working on some of the logistics of that right now to see if we can make it happen. So stay tuned for more information. We'll share that information with the community once we get there. I think everybody in the room knows that we have a lot of great infrastructure projects on the go in the park, and some of them have wrapped up, but most of them will wrap up around 2020. And some highlights of that. If you've been out to Flower Pot Island at all this year, you'll see that our new dock area has a really great arrival and departure system in place because it just creates a better experience for people when they get to the island and depart. And if you happen to have to go to the bathroom while you're over there, you'll know we have a whole bunch of new composting toilets that are really the most eco-friendly way of dealing with human waste. And We actually had a meeting today at the park. You might be amazed to know how much time we spend in a park talking about toilets. It's a really, really big, toilets and traffic is a really big part of our conversations. If you have driven by Singing Sands lately, you'll know it's closed for the season. We are doing some work there, and what we're going to do is create new visitor facilities that are much better than they were before, and especially focused on making it a very ecologically sustainable place. The old parking lot was sort of on the dunes between the Fen and Lake Huron, and we're rehabilitating that so that the natural flow between the Fen wetland, the dunes, and the lake is preserved. So we're really excited about that. That's a big bonus ecologically for that site. On the same note, you're going to see some construction work as well on the roads in Dorcas Bay Road. As part of our project called the Road to Recovery, we're building more eco passages underneath the road so that small critters, turtles and snakes and frogs and small mammals can cross under without getting killed. Road mortality is a fairly significant impact on species at risk in particular. So we're excited about that. And lastly, this is a more sort of internal process, but it's going to involve hopefully everybody in the room. You come out and help us out. We will be starting our management planning process for the park soon, and it takes us a few years. It's a long process that involves a lot of consultation and involvement of the community. So we have a vision going forward for the future for the parks. And we're really excited, particularly about this sustainable tourism initiative, because we know that many of the great things that will come out of this will help to feed us in our management plan as well. So super excited to be working with this team and all the partners on this project. Thanks so much.
So after our October meeting, for those of you who are there, you probably remember the millions of sticky notes that were fluttering around the room. So it was pretty overwhelming to try to figure out what to do with all of these ideas. While we knew there was a sense of urgency to get something done as early as the 2017 season, we also recognized our limits, financial limits, and also limited human resources as all working as volunteers. So an educational campaign seemed to fit the bill, both doable yet impactful. So the purpose of this educational campaign was to provide a more clear and consistent message to visitors and specific advice for sustainable tourism practices, to educate visitors about the significance and sensitivity of the ecosystems on the Saugeen Peninsula, and influence the direction of the local tourism industry and integrate sustainability into our brand as a tourism destination. So for me, the line between marketing and education is a little bit blurry. However, in the present age of social media and diminishing attention spans, we knew that something short and sweet would probably be the most effective. So kind of when we started thinking about this, my inspiration, I'm embarrassed to say, was this. I'm not sure if this is familiar to anyone. I'm not a huge Lululemon shopper, but I'm aware it exists. So they call it a manifesto, and so it has all these things that like friends are more important than money, and sweat once a day to regenerate your skin, and things like that. But it's really it's a marketing tool, but it's also education. So after a small group of us, which formed at that February meeting, right here in Tobermory. So we had the October meeting, then we had another meeting in February to specifically focus on things doable for 2017. We started crafting our manifesto. So that was a collaborative effort worked on by myself, Graham Thomas, Jenna McGuire, Judy McLeod, Rod Langman, Steve Levesque, Bev Sawyer, Lenore Kishig, John Hazelmeyer, Dora Ritchie, and others. And after many drafts and some careful wordsmithing, we came up with this. So hopefully you've already seen this if we did distribution well. But if not, it reads, "You are here, a sacred place of beauty and biodiversity. Discover ancient landscapes, wild waters, and infinite skies. Honor it today to share it with tomorrow." And if you're really ambitious, maybe you'll even flip it over and read the back, which has 6 tips that include planning ahead, reconsider your car, stick to trails and public accesses, tap into tap water, share your snacks with your friends, not wildlife, and if you pack it in, pack it out. And thanks to our partners, BPEG, SON, Parks Canada, RTO7, and thanks to Tomory Press for printing all of these things, and Susan King and local businesses for helping with distribution. Hopefully our visitors saw this and maybe it impacted their actions, we hope. So this was the 2017 version, and we hope to make revisions to make it even better and more effective and also explore some additional formats. So if you have any ideas or feedback for making this campaign as effective as possible, then let us know. So this was our short-term action, the thing that we thought we could accomplish for 2017. But we also recognized that there was a larger, more expensive, but important action, and that was to develop a sustainable tourism action plan. So I would like to introduce Oliver Martin, who's a partner with 2031, the consulting company who was awarded the RFP for this project.
Thanks everyone for having me, and thanks to RTO7 and obviously the steering committee for trusting us to be your partner on this project. I'll be presenting a few slides, who we are as a firm, our philosophy around tourism development. I'll present a few case studies on good sustainable tourism management versus a lot of bad examples of how tourism is managed globally and in Canada. Then I'm going to present the business case for why sustainable tourism management makes sense in this day and age. And lastly, I will show you the process that we're going to follow for the next couple of months to work with the steering committee and the broader community out there to develop this plan. We are a Vancouver, Toronto-based firm, but the last thing you want is a bunch of urban guys from Vancouver and Toronto telling you how to manage your destination. What we're going to do is really be the facilitators of the process. We work with, on average, between 20 and 30 destinations a year, 15 in Canada and the rest internationally. And they're anywhere from the Canadian Tourism Commission, which is the national marketing agency for Canada, the Jordanian Tourism Board in the Middle East, Dubai Tourism, to very small tourism destinations like Lethbridge, for instance, in Alberta. The commonality amongst all of them is tourism challenges are pretty consistent across the world. We have problems of overcapacity. Canadians and international travelers, unfortunately, we all travel 2 times a year. We travel at Christmas time and we travel in the summertime. And as much as we want to get people to travel more throughout the calendar, it just is a fact of life because our school schedules are that way. We have a problem of too many tourists going to too few places and getting overburdened with a lack of parking or real estate prices going up for locals, or there not being enough availability of bathrooms. And this is consistent across the board. What is important is that the steering committee, the community at large, and under the leadership of RTO7, you have realized that you have to do something about it. And you know, of the 30-odd destinations we work with around the world, 29 of them are pretty much doing tourism the way they've always done it. They have 2 major campaigns a year to market to travelers to come in the summer and market to travelers to come in December. They like casinos, they like big hotels, they like the tour buses gorging out the number of travelers that come out. And what we have said as a firm is we want to challenge people to think differently. Because tourism, and this is very much our philosophy, tourism is not just people getting off a tour bus and coming to a destination and going for a hike and then getting back in the tour bus and going somewhere else. Tourism is a key driver of economic development. Tourism drives trade. Tourism, just like the pharmaceutical industry, the forestry industry, the retail industry, is a key pillar of our economy. In Canada, we're very good about getting government support to fund it, but at the private sector level, we tend to be doing things the same way we've always been doing it. We market to the boomers because we've always marketed to the boomers. We market to big hotel chains because big hotel chains will bring volume into the destination. What we like to tell destinations is it's not necessarily about the numbers that are coming into the destination, but it's the quality of tourism. One tourist is not the same as one other tourist over here. One tourist can be spending $100 in a destination, one tourist can be spending $1,000 in a destination, staying longer, dispersing throughout the community, eating local, eating authentic, immersing themselves in the local culture. And those are the types of travelers that we want in our destinations. This just gives you a snapshot of some of the destinations we work with. I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of 3 key clients. Banff Lake Louise Tourism at the top here. We were engaged by them in 2015 to develop a new strategy to target high-value US travelers. And we worked very closely with Parks Canada, based in Banff, to develop this project. And it was a research-based project. Another one here in the middle of the pack here, the section over here on your left, would be the Palau Visitors Authority. Palau is a tiny little destination in the middle of the Pacific, and it's really no different from Bruce Peninsula. It's a natural, pristine environment. It has a local First Nations group, and it has benefited for years with good quality tourism. And then something just triggered in 2014, where their numbers went from relatively stable numbers that they were able to manage sustainably. Overnight, they just dramatically increased tenfold, and it inundated the destination with tour buses, with people taking coral off the reefs, people putting their garbage around the natural environment where they were hiking, and it really affected the local community. And the local community looked at tourism not as a benefit to the community, but a hindrance. So we were hired to help develop a sustainable tourism strategy for them. And then another example here is the destination of Treasure Beach in Jamaica. For any of you that have been to Jamaica, I can pretty much guarantee that most of us that have been to Jamaica have gone to an all-inclusive beach. And that's just how tourism is done in Jamaica. It's these big all-inclusive resorts that foster large numbers of people that come for 7 days or 14 days. And that's just how tourism is done in Jamaica. Treasure Beach is a small little community in the southern part of Jamaica that was a fishing community for decades. And as any of you know in the fishing industry globally, it's in the decline. And that's because fish stocks globally are in decline. So this community went from a community of 7,000 individuals to 1,500 in the span of 5 years because the young people moved out. There was no jobs and there was no hope. So they got the support of the World Bank to develop a sustainable tourism strategy that involved the community. How to retrain individuals that were engaged in the fishing sector to provide fishing sports tourism, to get local community members to develop community goods that local tourists can buy, to get local community people to open up their homes, to have homestays. And it is now a viable industry contributing to the economic development of the region. And we were brought on board to develop that strategy. Sorry, I have notes here, so I'm just going to pull them up. And if I'm talking too fast, you can tell me. I've been in the car for 4 hours and I've probably had about 6 coffees. This is us on the team. So we're a total of 12 consultants at our firm. 4 of us are partners and 8 of us are associates. I'm one of the partners here on the project. This is our project team that we've allocated to the project that's going to work with the steering committee to undertake the process. Greg Klassen on the left-hand side, he used to be the CEO of Canadian Tourism Commission. His background is in tourism strategy. Ray over here is from Vancouver Island. He's done a lot of work in BC and Alberta, working with local communities and First Nations groups to develop sustainable tourism strategies. Myself, I'm more on the research and stakeholder engagement side. My colleague Alexis specializes in business events tourism. And we're going to be the project team that you're going to have for the life of this project. We've also agreed to check in with the steering committee at we've said 3 and 6 months, but we're probably going to extend that out to 6 and 12 months. Once the project is delivered, we'll work with you to make sure that it is effectively implemented. Tourism strategies tend to sit on shelves after the consultants have left and the steering committees go back to their day jobs, and that's unfortunate. The only way to make this project successful is, first and foremost, you have community buy-in, and secondly, that we hold the steering committee to account to make sure that key aspects are in fact implemented on a go-forward basis. And I know that they have the commitment, and they've mentioned this, so this is a very positive development. Now with tourism, you're wondering, why our name is 2031. For the whole history of human society, so go back to the ancient Romans and the Greeks, Marco Polo, the Middle Ages, up into 2012. 2012 was the year that we achieved 1 billion international tourists. So it took all of human society, for the history of human society, to get to 1 billion annual tourists in 2012. By the year 2031, that number will double to 2 billion. So what took all that centuries and that millennia to get 1 billion travelers, we're going to do that in a span a little less than 20 years. And that is exciting in the sense that it's going to generate 3 trillion in tourism revenues for local businesses, for local city councils, for cities, for national governments. It's going to generate a lot of revenue. But what it means is an extra 43 million tourists are going to travel internationally. And that is very scary for destinations like Bruce, because your national asset here is very limited in its carrying capacity. So it's a positive development in the sense that tourism is growing, and that's exciting, but it's also a scary thing that we need to manage. Most of that growth will happen in Asia Pacific. For the last 50 years or so, since the end of the Second World War and the emergence of the boomers and more disposable incomes and more steady jobs, people started to travel. Travel is very much linked to disposable income. The more disposable incomes and wealth a nation has, the more they travel. There's 10 countries in the world that generate 90% of the travelers. Canada, the US, Germany, France, the UK, Japan, Korea, Australia, Scandinavia. That mix is changing now, and it's changing because Asia Pacific is where the wealth in the world is now starting to shift. And we know this. In Canada, we've had a lot of declining industries, and we've seen a lot of that economic growth shift to Asia Pacific. And this is just a fact of economics and how human societies are shifting. They also have the population base. But it's very much driven by China. China, up until 1999, Chinese people couldn't travel internationally. You needed to have a very extensive visa, you needed to show your itinerary, you needed to get foreign exchange from a specific bank, and it was very hard. In 1999, it was the watershed development where the Chinese traveler got to go to Hong Kong and Macau, and then from there, the next year, they got to go to another 12 countries, then another 12, and it just kept on expanding. Canada got something in 2012 called ADS status, Approved Destination Status, which means that we can get Chinese visitors. In 1999, we had 100 or so Chinese actual leisure travelers. China now is Canada's second largest source market of international travelers. And it's only taken a few years to get there. It's supplanted Japan, UK, Germany, and it'll eventually take over the US with the exception of the auto drive traffic that we're getting. But bringing this back to Bruce Peninsula, 90% of the travel that we get in Ontario is in fact Ontarians traveling within the province. So our market very much in this area is the GTA, Kitchener-Waterloo, and Hamilton. That's very much the market. Why we want to look at the international market is for every dollar that a domestic traveler spends in Canada, an international traveler spends 3 times that amount of money. They stay longer, and they're also willing to do things beyond the beaten path. So one thing we do look at when we develop tourism strategies, very much involved with the community and the community ability to influence the direction of the strategy. But we also look at it from the demand perspective. And the million-dollar question that we want to ask in this business is, what is the type of customer, the traveler, the visitor, that we want to our destination? And like I mentioned before, no two travelers are created equal. We tend to market to what's called the tourist. The tourist is someone that wants to get away, they want something simple, uncomplicated, they're looking for that bargain. And that's very much what's called the mass market. These are the people that tend to get on the bus tours, that they come up to northern Bruce Peninsula for the day, but they also bring their own lunch, and they actually fill up their gas tank in GTA, as opposed to spending money in the county here. And that's what we largely focus on in Canada. We focus on the tourist. What we want to do as a destination is more and more focus on trying to get the traveler. And there's a nuance here. The traveler is very much looking for that experiential vacation. They want to get away and experience local and authentic. They want to immerse themselves in the local community. They want to eat the local food product. They want to go to the local farmer's market. They want to do things off the beaten track. And we know from extensive amount of research that's been done in Canada that the traveler spends more money. If you market and speak to the traveler, the tourist will follow. The travelers are very much the trendsetters. Sorry, this is very hard to say, I just realized. If you want to break them down in terms of bullet points, they're authentic seeking. Authentic seeking is very much a loaded term in travel and tourism because every destination can be authentic, right? China can be authentic, Paris can be authentic, Italy can be authentic. Authentic is very much defined, and it's very relative in how it's defined. But authentic is they want to see the real, rural, natural, pristine Canada. That's probably one of the key points of differentiation for Northern Bruce Peninsula. They want to very much immerse themselves. They want to know what locals do. How do locals live and how do they interact? And that's why we've seen Airbnb go from nowhere 5 years ago to be one of the largest accommodation providers in the world because people get to live that sense of being local. Signature experiences are very key. As much as we like to watch the travel and tourism shows, we watch National Geographic television, we read Condé Nast Leisure magazine, the average consumer doesn't know much about a destination because we're consumed with everything else in our daily lives. We have mortgages, we have kids' soccer, we have the roof that we need to fix, etc. We have a bunch of things that we need to focus on in our daily lives. So we don't tend to know much about a destination. So it becomes the importance of the signature experience. What's that unique selling point of a destination? We obviously have it in spades up here in the Tobermory region. The other interesting component here is sustainable consumption. And I'm laughing because my former colleague, Doug Miller's in the back, from GlobeScan, but GlobeScan, the firm, does a lot of research into sustainable consumption, but it is very much not a new concept, but it's a growing concept. Consumers, and especially travel and tourism consumers, want to go to a hotel that they know their staff are being paid a living wage. They want to go to a destination that uses local ingredients in their restaurant. They want to go to a national pristine park that is in fact natural and pristine. They don't want to see garbage littered. They don't want to see the park being taken advantage of. Consumers, travel consumers, are demanding more of a sustainable consumption component when they travel. And the other concept here, and this is very exciting for Canadian destinations, especially Northern Bruce Peninsula, is nature now has a luxury component to it. As much as we like to consider areas like Toronto or Beijing have their local parks or their areas that consumers can hang out at on weekends and whatnot, you can't experience real nature until you get into real nature, and you have it in spades here. And it's in demand because these consumers that we want to focus on live in these areas that they are just inundated with cell phones and honking horns and traffic jams, and they're willing to pay a premium to go to a national pristine site. And the key is we need to start valuing the tourism asset that we have here in the parks. Here's the change in dynamics of sustainable tourism. We might have talked about sustainable tourism as being a niche product, and we use that term called ecotourism. And in our business, we don't like using that term because eco implies that it's niche. when in fact sustainable tourism will eventually become the mainstream. It will eventually get there. We are very much shifting from a focus on having hotels that are LEED certified to focusing more on what's the human development aspect. Are we paying staff fair wages? Are we training our staff effectively? Do we have proper policies to hire a certain number of youth and women? Also fully integrated environmental and social impacts in terms of how we're developing the destination. So it's not just about protecting the natural pristine environment, but it's also ensuring that the community benefits. That means decent jobs, interaction and cultural exchange with travelers, that you have an ability to sell your wares to travelers if you have a restaurant, etc. Then there's really no benefit of having tourists up here because they're just using your asset for free. So you need to have some sort of an economic and social benefit to having a tourist in your community. There's also the shift of good tourism management being a co-partnership of the private sector, nonprofit organizations, community groups, and government. It can't just be government. If we leave things for government in Canada to do, then it takes time. It takes decades, and things don't shift. Good tourism management has to be fully integrated with the business community. The business community in travel and tourism was very much open to looking at sustainable tourism management because they saw the business imperative. They realized that if they had solar generation for power, that they LEED certified their buildings, that they had an organic, a chef that worked with organic ingredients, they could charge a premium and decrease costs. So key hotel chains like Marriott, Fairmount, Banyan Tree, Six Senses have been leaders in sustainable tourism management. But I can literally count on one hand the number of destinations around the world that have fully developed and implemented a sustainable tourism strategy. Some of us talk about Costa Rica being a sustainable tourism destination, but it's not really. It's good at marketing itself. The other thing here is from outputs to outcomes. Across the board, any destination in the world, it doesn't matter if you're Cairo, or if you're Beijing, or if you're Northern Bruce Peninsula, you tend to focus on one metric of progress, and that is numbers. How many folks are we getting into our park? How many folks are coming into our hotel? How many folks are coming into our community? It's numbers, 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 more and more and more. Now, we want to start looking at what is the yield? Are we getting a good return on investment? Is it protecting our national environment? Is it contributing to jobs? Are we dispersing people within the community? If we can say yes to that, then we're going to be a lot more successful in how we manage our tourism assets. These are a few of the benefits of sustainable tourism, and I know most of you know this, but first and foremost, it can differentiate your brand. Tourism is very much a brand game. 60% of the decision to travel to a destination is based on the brand. I go to Paris because it's just a romantic city. I go to Niagara Falls because I'll see one of the biggest falls in the world. I'll go to Northern Bruce Peninsula because I'm going to go see one of the most pristine natural parks in the world. The other benefit here is higher yield. If you effectively manage your destination, you can charge a higher premium. So instead of playing the numbers game of getting more travelers on a tour bus, we can start getting more fully independent travelers coming in their car, spending 5 days here, and spending a lot of money in the destination. Lowers your environmental and lower environmental impacts and higher societal impacts, and obviously greater community benefits, regional dispersal. There's 3 key things here that we love about good sustainable tourism management. First and foremost, you want to get people away from concentrated areas to disperse throughout the community. And travelers want to do this. Unfortunately, some of us on the tourism management side tend to only focus on certain key assets. So one of the best ways of developing a good sustainable tourism management strategy is to tell people about all the other things that they are to do within a destination. The other one here is seasonality balance, and Bill mentioned this. In Canada, we are plagued by a problem of only getting tourists for 2 weeks in June, July and August, and 2 weeks in September. And that's across the board. PEI as a province, its tourism industry is only those 12 weeks of the year. And they're trying. And unfortunately, we have weather issues, right? And nobody really wants to go to a freezing -20 destination when they can jump on a plane and go sit themselves on a beach. But there's travelers out there that want to cross-country ski. There are travelers out there that want to see northern lights. There's travelers out here that want to see natural environments in their winter state, their fall state, their spring state. So there's a great ability to diversify your visitors in the other seasons. There are challenges on how you're going to staff hotels, etc., without a lack of student employment, etc. The other aspect here on the benefits of sustainable tourism is obviously employment. Unfortunately, as an industry, we are one of the lowest paid industries across the board. This industry survives because of low-cost labor. Low-cost maids, front desk staff workers, tour guides, boat operators. We don't tend to pay our staff well. We need to change that, and tourism needs to be considered a viable, good-paying job or career. This is our work plan, and this is scary because it's a lot of things that are listed here, and I know it's really small print, but we are engaging in a 4-phase process, like all consultants do. We like our 4-phase process. Phase 1 is very much the discovery phase. We were inundated with a lot of data and documents from the steering committee, and that's very much to get up to speed on what has been done in the area, what your tourism numbers are, where people are traveling to, where your tourism assets. That was very much phase 1. Phase 2 is our broad stakeholder engagement phase. And like I mentioned before, good tourism management is based on what stakeholders tell you. We're getting too many tourists, we're not getting enough tourists. We need to develop this, we need to underdevelop this. If we need those inputs, and we're going to be talking to a number of individuals. We've got interviews with the steering committee. The steering committee has also provided us with a list of key tourism stakeholders. We will also be having a stakeholder survey, and I will make that available if you give Megan your email address after this. And we're going to be doing a few workshops with the steering committee to work through some issues. Once we've done all of that, those are the input stages. We then get into the actual development of the strategy, which will be an iterative, collaborative process with the steering committee. A lot of back and forth, what doesn't work, how can we measure progress, what are HR issues that we need to focus on, what are some tourism assets that we need to work on. One thing I did jump over, and I am rushing because I realize I've gone over time, is I'll look at your key assets here. Assets are very important. We call that the hardware of tourism. It's very important that we know where travelers are going to, where they're staying, where can they buy things, where can they hike, and more importantly, where are other avenues that we could possibly develop to take pressure off certain sites. And again, going back to that numbers game, as good consultants, we're not going to say, develop over here so we can increase your numbers like this. We're trying to ultimately try to get higher value tourists, more dispersal, better seasonality. And if we can do those 3 things, then we're going to have a decent, progressive sustainable tourism strategy that we can then implement over the next 3 years. I've gone over time. So I think I'm done. But I'm going to open up questions.
Are there any quick questions at the back?
Are we going to get a copy of this presentation?
Yeah, if you put your email address on the form as you came in, and I can read it, you will not only get a version of the PowerPoint, but also the survey and any other supporting documentation that Oliver sends out.
Thank you.
Jeremy?
Yeah, I was just wondering about owl bars and rattlesnakes. How important is it to protect owl bars and the population of Massasauga rattlesnakes that is outside of the national park from a sustainable tourism perspective?
Yes. So it's basically as important as we tell them it is. So they have a list of informed stakeholders and also a wider survey and all these different community engagement strategies. So if they hear loud and clear from the community that that's really important, then that will be reflected in the plan. Yeah.
I'm interested in an article that was in the Own Sound Times a couple of weeks ago. It stated that the consultant would be asked to inventory attractions, accommodations, assess their ecological, cultural, social, infrastructure, management capacities, with a view to improving a visitor experience. You've done absolutely nothing to solve my problems as a resident. It's overrun by 500,000 people every summer. Acting.
I can supplement that, but how would you take that?
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure how exactly to respond. Yeah, I think, Barney, that's a key part of this. It's not talking about expanding tourism. We've had this explosion in the last 3 or 4 years in particular, where you live in particular and other areas. So I think that's part of the understanding that 2031, we've given them that information. We haven't asked them, for example, to come and how do we get more tourists? I think that's not the request at all. It's how do we make what we have currently sustainable and then shift it to a different model that Oliver talked about tonight. The smaller numbers, higher yield travelers versus tourists. So I think that's part of it. And then I know that Parks has a role as well in some particular parts of the community. And it's actually following a very similar process to what Oliver's talking about for Big Tub, for Flower Pot, for some of the areas that have been overrun. Probably not the answer that is going to solve anything tonight, but
That's right, it doesn't.
yeah.
So I am actually, was more inspired tonight than I really expected to be.
Megan, could I,
Oh, yeah, Isla?
yeah, if you cut off questions.
Well, one more question, go for it.
Okay, I was interested in your comments about getting people, these new travellers, into cars rather than buses. And I'd love to hear more from you about that, because we've got one long highway up this peninsula,
Certainly that's a good point. Now, I can clarify that. We tend to look at bus travelers as lower yield. It's, those buses that come up from Toronto that they've got a packed lunch or they go to one dedicated restaurant, they're paying $99, it's going to the tour operator based in Toronto. They get disgorged from the tour bus and they've got an hour and 15 minutes to go for a hike and they have to get back on the bus and then they go somewhere else. That's called bad tourism. And it's because a certain number of tour operators in Canada, internationally, in the GTA, that's their business model. And it works for some destinations. Maybe it's good for Niagara Falls with, they like casinos and they want to go do that. It's not necessarily good for most destinations in Ontario which have major carrying capacity issues. There's a real challenge with getting a large volume of concentrated travelers getting off a bus and coming to a destination and then just inundating it for a short concentrated period of time and really not contributing to the local economic development and protecting the natural environment. That is why we exist up here in Bruce, and that's not what we're proposing. The alternative is called an FIT traveler, and you can get them through good tour operators. They stay a little bit longer, they want to go to interpretive centers, they want to culturally immerse themselves in the local First Nations tourism product, or they travel by car. And I know there's challenges around the infrastructure and how we can get them up to Northern Bruce Peninsula, but to be very clear, and this was in the RFP and the marching orders that we received from RTO 7 and the steering committee, we are not advocating an increase in travel. First and foremost, good tourism management can only exist if you have good measurement. And the only measurement numbers that we have are from Parks Canada, and then anecdotal evidence that is saying that we're getting a certain amount of travelers. The problem that we have in Ontario is a lack of good credible numbers, statistical numbers, that are accurate in a timely fashion. It's just what every destination in Ontario has to deal with. So in the absence of those hard numbers, we have to go to other third partners to find out what kind of tourism numbers exist out there. And we know there is a challenge. We know that your tourism season is very concentrated for a certain number of months. We know you have a large number of tourists that are hitting up the destinations and that are inundating themselves in certain areas. So our clear instructions are to say, how can we do things differently? Tourism will always exist. Unless there's a strict moratorium where you put a Trump-style wall around northern Bruce Peninsula, tourists will always come here. The key is how we can effectively manage it to make sure that we're getting the right type of travelers. And instead of getting 10 travelers a year, I'd rather us get one traveler that is spending even more money, staying longer, and immersing themselves within northern Bruce Peninsula. And that's good tourism.
Thanks, Oliver. I'm gonna head off the questions, but fortunately this process is just beginning. We're just launching it, so there's gonna be lots of opportunity to communicate with Oliver and his team, as well as via email or whatever. So lots to come on that front. Also, just while I have such a large group in front of me, if you are too impatient to wait for us to finish this sustainable tourism plan and wait for community collaborative action, and you have a tourism business, this year I became a member of Green Tourism Canada, so it's a third-party sustainability certification. They basically do a third-party assessment, and then they'll give you a bronze, silver, gold certification. So it's a really great way for the private sector to take a lead and say, I'm a sustainable tourism business. It's good for marketing, it helps you sleep at night, can probably save you money, and there's lots of benefits to that. And that's once again supporting what Oliver was talking about in terms of the private sector, local community organizations, and government all taking the same step forward. So while getting the plan off the ground is important and exciting, it's only the first step. Our next important step is to actually participate in its development, to respond to Oliver and his team's emails and phone calls, and fill this plan with your valuable perspectives and ideas. So it can truly be our plan, not 2031's plan, but our plan. And that will also significantly increase our chances of actually being able to implement the recommendations. If you provide your email address, you'll be getting more information, so make sure you do that before you head out. Also, as most of you are likely aware, the Bruce Peninsula Environment Group, or BPEG, has a monthly speaker series. In most cases, aside from this month, it's on the first Wednesday of the month in Lions Head, usually at the Lions Head Christchurch Hall. At 7:30, and so next month is our annual potluck and AGM, so if you're interested in learning more about BPEG, come on out. And also thank you to Brenda and Steve for doing the snacks, and for those who helped set up tonight, and to all of you for attending.